This podcast is part of the TrekSphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit TrekSphere.com.
Well, we already know the answer. The answer will be no.
I don't know. It's got time travel in it. Like, that may be...
They'll fuck it up. They're gonna fuck it up.
No, it's got Q and Guinan in it, so I hope...
I know. It's going to be the massive fuck-ups of the century.
Well, what
Q,
I'm...
Guinan, and time travel, and they're going to fuck it up.
What I'm thinking is going to happen is that they're going to have learned from their mistakes from season 1, and they're just going to lean into Star Trek The Next Generation.
They're going to learn from their mistakes from season 1, then those people will be fired, and they'll bring in all new people
Right.
who have not learned the lessons yet
Yeah.
to make the mistakes over again.
Exactly. And do it all over again. Yep. All right.
Your turn. I'm waiting.
Oh, is it? Ah, darn. All right. There was... What was that movie or that pilot that we watched with Continuum?
Blown Away with Tommy Lee Jones and Jeff Bridges.
With Continuum Drag.
Oh, Timeless?
Was that what it was?
I think it was called Timeless. Season 1 or season 100. Felt like it. Season, I think 5. Does that ring true? Season 5, episode 100 of Voyager?
Something like that.
Timeless?
Right. Sorry, I got distracted in my head, and I was thinking about like what episode it was, and I was trying to think because I was thinking about this last night. Like, is there any other TV series that has done this kind of thing where they've sent somebody back and they've come back older but feral, or like completely different, not mind controlled, but something like that? And I couldn't think of one. So
No,
anyway.
the only time that ever happens is when they're alternates or counterparts in a different universe.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. But nobody like steps through a time vortex and then comes back completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
That is true. Interesting. Oh, a little foreshadowing.
Right? Anyway, as you know, this is the Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek and not just 90s gone back in time restart TV show. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul, and the criteria by which we judge these episodes. Number 1, is there science fiction inherent to the plot? Number 2, is that science fiction unique or novel in some way? And number 3, is there an ethical or moral dilemma in the episode? I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and this week we watched Time's Orphan, which is episode 24, season 6 of
DS, yep.
of Diep Spakinini.
624? That's what you said?
6:24. Yep. Give or take a half an hour. And the blurb says, I'm almost there. O'Brien is reunited with his wife and their 2 children. But during a celebratory picnic on a nearby planet, 8-year-old Molly falls into a vortex. Okay, I was mixing up the 2 blurbs because this guy clearly did not watch the episode.
Well, finish the blurb.
That's
You
it.
didn't Finish the blurb. Oh, that's it? That's it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because that's how the cold open ends.
that's
with
the cold open.
Molly falling into the vortex. And the guy's like, all right, I know what happens in this episode. Done.
Not only did they not watch the episode, but has contempt for Star Trek. Because they think, oh, this must be what the rest of the episode is about.
I guess that's true. Like, does he, to his defense.
Or she.
To her defense, they throw somebody who really hates Star Trek onto this, and they're like, whatever. No, but to their defense, it might be what you said, where they are giving just the blurb to try and remind the audience which episode it is. I really don't think that's the case, but after you said that, I was like, all right, that's a fair argument.
Well, it can't be trying to entice people to watch, because they're not really enticing.
Right, okay.
I guess it's kind of enticing, falls through a vortex. I don't think that's a word they ever say either. I think they say portal.
Yeah, oh yeah. Right, that's so true. This...
Vortex, that's a science fiction-y nerdy name of a word. I'll use that.
I still love the one where Kai Wynn is mentioned in the opener and we never see her, and the blurb talked about him. Like, clearly that person didn't even try.
Yeah, that's where the contempt comes in.
Yeah.
Right. They just they think that, oh, I'll just mention one of their nerdy names and the nerds will flock to it like catnip.
Right. I do like also how we've spent 5 minutes just talking about the Netflix blurb again. But I like also that the Prime blurbs for Star Trek, the original series, sound like horoscopes or every Star Trek episode ever. An alien race tries to attack the Enterprise.
Yeah, they boil it down to the most vague thing where they probably copy and paste it.
Right.
I'm
It's
sure
the exact same blurb all over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about, I don't know if you have anything before this, but after Molly comes back.
Wow, we're really into the episode now. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can back up. No, what have you got? Sorry, it's the first thing that sticks in my mind. Is the first thing I want to talk about. So you can back it up.
Well, okay. So there's one thing I do want to talk about that is kind of a general thing. Maybe we should do that before we get into the nitty gritty of the compelling episode. So I want to talk about time travel in Star Trek.
Hold on. Nope, I got to stop you before you even start. I know that compelling was in quotes, and I hate that compelling was in quotes because this episode totally did not hit the mark. Like the way this could have been handled would have been this could have been a seminal Star Trek episode, but they didn't do that. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so time travel in Star Trek. So they don't seem to the Federation, the Starfleet, they don't seem to employ time travel as a regular thing. Right? Federation ships are not time traveling into the past or into the future to get things done, even though that would be an amazing show.
Yes.
Right? We've talked about this before.
Yes.
But whenever they encounter time travel, they are so casual about it. It happens very often in all of the shows where it's like, oh, I'm reading some chronoton emissions from this thing. And they not only are they very casual about it, because if, it's like when you would see a time machine, someone walk through a time machine and there's evidence of time travel. I was like, oh my God, it exists. It's possible. Mm-hmm. This changes the world.
Right.
But they're not like that. They're like, I'm detecting chronoton emissions and I can see that there's a chronoton field up ahead of us. It's like as though they're familiar with it. Like they just had a drill on this last week.
Right.
It's like, we know what to do because we have to scan the thing. It's what is it about time travel that it seems like the Federation has had a history of time travel and then they finally banned it. And so we know all about it. We just know that we don't do it anymore. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of like why, because it could be very helpful, right? And accomplishing their goals. And so, but it seems to exist, but never employed. But it seems to be easy enough to do that they encounter it all the time.
Right. Well, and
because there was a Stargate in this episode that allowed you to Stargate through the Stargate into another timeline. They're like, oh man, this is somewhat interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bored by the Stargate, the ancient Stargate that we just found.
Another one. I keep tripping over these things and falling into vortexes. Right.
But we need to get our daughter back. And I can understand you want to get your daughter back. But there is a Stargate that allows you to time travel with seemingly no problems. Usually there's some sort of huge problem, like it blows their head off or something. Like that's the caveat. We can time travel, but it blows your head off. And just a random person's heads get blown off. Not the person time traveling, but just a random person.
That's the consequence of time travel. Somebody's head gets blown off. Right. Yeah. And I'm picturing that not like it explodes. Like it just pops off like a champagne bottle.
Yeah, it's like that thought experiment of if you could, if I gave you $1 million, but someone else on the planet had to die, some random person, would you take the $1 million?
Right.
It's that type of thing. Do I want to time travel back and meet my father or my mother in the past?
Right.
And is somebody's head worth getting blown off for that?
Yeah. What if it's one of theirs? The other thing too about that is they encounter it so casually, but they don't have any proper protocol for what you do with someone with time travel. And I think the reason for that is so they can kind of write each episode however they want based on the situation and not, this is the protocol for time travel. But it does still, for as much as they encounter it, it does seem strange that they don't know what to do with it once they've got it.
But they do know what. They hooked up all their machines to the Stargate and made it work again.
Well,
they seem to know what it is. They seem to know how to do it.
But it's kind of, but then there's that aspect of it too, where it's technology. They can rewire and reboot the technology for the time portal to work. But then O'Brien's plan is to destroy it when he's done.
I can't get my brain, because this is not isolated to this episode.
No,
this
not.
happens all the time.
Yeah, but usually it's a space thing and not a device. You know,
Right.
like there was yesterday's Enterprise. There's the cause and effect. You know, there's Timescape, like where things are happening in space that is causing time travel to happen, but there's not a device that is creating time travel.
Right. It just seems like even Picard, who has a insatiable curiosity for the universe, you could argue. But whenever he encounters time travel in the universe, he's like, report. Okay. How do we get out of this? How do we leave this thing? How do we leave time travel behind us so we can go to this? You know, we're due on Archaeology 5, so we can go study some plants. Right? It always.
Well, yeah. The goal is to seek out new life and new civilization, not fancy time travel technology.
I just don't.
Moving on.
I don't know why Starfleet doesn't have a time traveling machine at this point.
Right.
It's the same thing as cloaking. I don't. I understand why they tell me that they don't have a cloaking machine or a time travel. I mean, I could see that time travel. Like, why wasn't there a discussion between Sisko and O'Brien of the Prime Directive, where you cannot turn this thing back on? We don't know what's going to happen, who's going to come out of it, how have we already polluted the timeline? I'm surprised we're still here, you know?
Right.
It would seem like time travel would be contained within the Prime Directive, that we don't mess around with that stuff. That's the same thing as going to a planet and start pissing on all their plants. That's why we don't do that.
Right. But the other part of that too is they kind of shuffled that off to the side by saying the planet was completely uninhabited 400 years ago. You know, so there wasn't any worry about messing up the timeline or damaging violating the Prime Directive.
But if I was Cisco, I would say we don't know how this thing works. If when you turn it on, it's going to be 18 years later or 10 years later in the future, which it was, by the way. And they thought they were getting her right when she landed, right when Molly landed. But in fact, it wasn't. And so that's a perfect reason why you don't turn it back on again. Sorry about Molly, you know.
Right.
It would be cool. See, another part of this that would have made it actually science fiction was if they found like that drawing that she makes of the picnic. If they find like a cave drawing when they're trying to turn the machine back on, that was evidence that she was there 400 years ago. That kind of stuff. You know, like it's kind of like Time Zero, where they find evidence that is ancient, but just was done by them, was done by Molly, right? It's the same thing. That would have been cool. That would have been a nice little exploration of the science fiction instead of it just kind of being a very perfunctory. Here, like the pitch was this. The pitch was not, we want to do a time travel episode where we explore the consequences of time travel. The pitch was Molly gets sent back in time. They have to get her back. It's kind of like it's the Back to the Future plot line and not the science fiction. I couldn't think of an example, but you know what I mean?
I do. And it's funny that you say that's what the pitch was because no. Do you want to know what the pitch was?
Oh, God. Yeah.
So this episode is all the way from Next Generation. And
okay. Right. Yeah.
The idea was that Alexander would get stuck in a time vortex and time portal and come back older and have resentment towards his dad that he never tried to find him or that he didn't find him. And the episode would end with Alexander going back to that time period, wherever it was, because he was so out of time. Because the writer of the episode hated Alexander and wanted him dead. And I forget who it was, but it was either one of the producers or one of the head writers. Their mother loved Alexander and needed to keep him alive. And so the episode was never used. And then finally in Deep Space Nine, he was like, I got this script. And the head writer
Molly.
was like, well, yeah, the head writer was like, fine. We only have like one season left. We need some stuff with Keiko and O'Brien. And the also, this is my last little note about it. There was not supposed to be a B plot, but they realized that Dax was going to be dying soon, and they wanted to have some more stuff about Worf and Dax's future, so it would just be a little bit more of a gut punch when she did die.
Okay, so I want to talk about that for a second. The B plot.
The B plot?
Of Worf trying to
quotes,
prove
yeah.
himself as a father.
Which I think is totally valid. No matter what you say, like, he sucked fathering Alexander, so he definitely needs to prove himself. And I love that he calls himself out on it.
Even if it was, I was a shitty dad, and I need to make this right, and it was an earnest look at that, which it wasn't, by the way. It
wasn't. I know.
Isn't it fun? It turned into the B plot has now been officially perverted into just comical hijinks. Isn't it funny? We put together a little baby and a Klingon.
Right. But the sad thing is, we never got to see it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do that, why tell us all of the comedy stuff? Like,
I know.
why can you not show us?
Because Michael Dorn actually is terrible with children and drops them all the time.
Right.
And they couldn't risk it.
Yeah.
It's in his contract. Not allowed to touch the children.
Right.
I just
like giving the baby a batleth and being like
like
a
this.
Klingon baby.
Yeah.
Klingon baby knows how to hunt.
Why have this? I understand that you need to somehow endear them together, so when we kill Dax, it's going to feel that much worse. But it's just so dumb. Again, contempt for the audience. You think that just because we dress Michael Dorn up as Worf and what's her name up as Dax, what's her name? Gillian Johnson, who plays Dax.
Oh, right.
You got it.
I used to know. I don't remember now.
Me too. Anyway, that just because they're on screen together, that's enough. Them just being on screen is enough for these people. We don't have to write anything for them that's compelling or interesting. Just put them in there with a baby. They're going to love it. It's going to be great. Action. I can only think that is what the conversations were. Because why is this in the show? I'm so pissed about this. It doesn't make any sense. Why is this the Star Trek that we've come to know and love?
Well, and here's the thing about this episode, and this is kind of what I wanted to get to. As a parent, this episode probably hit me way more differently than it did you. They missed the mark in both of them. You know, this should have been Worf, kind of like you said, like his genuine redemption of trying to be a good father, and her Jadzia being like, what is the issue? Like, you are taking this way too far, and and have him say, like, it's not for me, it's for you, and that dialogue, whatever, that's fine, but have him realize that it stopped being about her and about proving to himself that he could take care of a child in the way that he never did with Alexander. Have this. I mean, it's kind of, I don't remember if we said this on the podcast or before it, but it's the Barney Stinson from the dad's point of view. Like, I abandoned this other kid. Here's another kid who's not even mine, but it gives me the chance to see what it could have been like for all that time that I never got with my other son.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that sentiment. I feel like it does not need to be the B plot.
Well, it doesn't need to be the comedy B plot.
Right.
Like, I'm fine with it being a B plot, but actually give it the emotional weight that it deserves. And then on the flip side of that, going back to the beginning, after Molly comes back, they find her and she's 10 years older. She's now 18. And they sedate her immediately, which, side note there, that was medically accurate. Like, it wasn't just we need to get her to shut up so we can do this scene.
They actually sedated her on camera?
No. Wild animals may actually die when they get caught, just because they're not used to the idea of being in a captive area. And so,
is that why they put Molly in a zoo on the station?
Basically,
she had her own little exhibit.
Right.
You can come see Molly.
Was so. I mean, they kind of explained it later on, but when they talked about how they were setting up a warehouse for her, I was like, you've got a holosuite. Why not just use the holosuite? Yep. Talk with Quark. Like,
they did handle that, though. I did like that even Quark was like, got a schedule, got to keep people paying,
Right.
I like that. That was good.
But it also, like, why is Starfleet not funding, those specific times set aside? Give her like 3 hours or 4 hours a day and have Starfleet pay for it. Like, it just seemed weird that they were dismissing this 8-year-old child.
Why doesn't the station, why doesn't the Federation have eminent domain over anything on the ship, whether it's a room or a holodeck? They can say like, nope, we're going to use it right now. Sorry, you got to cancel all your appointments. We're using it for official business for the protection and safety of the members of the station. Right? You think that would be
exactly
the thing? It's like, no, you have to pay for the holo suite, even though life and death is at stake.
Right.
Yeah, I felt like the whole part where she seems to be in kind of a zoo type of exhibit where she has her own little tree that she sleeps in, but she's in the holodeck. It's like, why didn't you think to put her in her cave anyway?
Right.
Like her actual cave.
Yeah, just go down to the surface. Right. But what was I going to say? Oh, so she's sedated, and they're talking about how like they need to try to go back to the portal and figure out how to swap out the mollies. And Keiko is like, no, this is our molly now. Like we need to accept that. And as a
swap out the mollies. So delayed reaction to a very funny thing you said. Sorry.
Thanks. But as a parent, if I was suddenly given my child 10 years older and it was like, there's a chance that we can get the other one back, but this is who you have to work with right now, I would not be dismissing the idea of getting my younger one back. Like I would want those 10 years back with my child. And so it just seems so strange that it doesn't seem so strange. It's very disappointing that Molly's mom was like, no, this 18-year-old woman is our new Molly, and this is the one that we just have to learn to deal with and get her to adapt to the station.
I agree with you. I felt like the conceit of the whole episode was we're trying to reintegrate Molly into as a human again. She seems like she's making progress, and then we have a regression, and she starts going crazy. She stabs some guy. Once again, we have the little 90-pound person able to best the 350-pound warrior people that are in Quark's things easily.
Right.
I mean, she sucker punched him, but, whether the stone hits the pitcher or the pitcher hits the stone, it's going to be bad for the pitcher.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they realize that this is not working. We should send her back to her home. She wants to go home. She's more comfortable there. She's lived there in isolation, probably just barely surviving. We should send her back to that. It's like, who the fuck are you people? You're sending back this person to be tortured? It's not like she came to you in perfect working condition. She had made clothes from something and was all like messed up. And you're sending her back to this?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Why wouldn't you just put her down on the planet, stay on the planet with her until you can reintegrate her slower? It's like, 48 hours has passed and she's not back to the old Molly. We should send her back. I'd like to return Molly, please. I'd like all my money back. And I just felt like, what? Okay, so this is where you got lazy, writers. Like, we need to figure out a way to get to our ending. And I felt like it would have been way easier to swallow this whole ending if they were trying to do something very illegal or what Bashir told them they couldn't do. They wanted to get back the younger Molly, effectively making the older Molly disappear and not have ever existed. But that's the only way out of this that we can find. She's going to die by herself eventually on the planet if we leave her there. We can't leave her there. We're a modern society. We have duties to our younger baby. We can't just now move to the bottom of this planet and watch our kid grow up, as an 18-year-old, but a cave person. So they took the hard... It's sort of like the same decision that Janeway has to make in Tuvix. It's like, yes, there are two people here that I'm effectively going to kill to get back, or one person I'm effectively going to kill to get back two people. But it's a bad scenario of choices. But we chose the least bad of them, right?
Right.
So why wasn't that the crux of the episode, where they're going to, they defy Cisco and they defy Bashir. Maybe Odo helps them out. We have to turn this thing back on and get old Molly back. Yes, it's going to kill older Molly, old Molly, not new old Molly. Yeah, new old Molly. It's going to kill her, but we need old Molly back.
Well, yeah, we got to get rid of the new old Molly and bring back the old young Molly.
Yeah. Thank you. That makes more sense.
Sure. Yeah, what I feel that the episode should have been was they were trying to get 8-year-old Molly back while they were trying to take care of 18-year-old Molly. And as they're doing this with 18-year-old Molly, Molly becomes more civilized, and Molly and Keiko becomes attached to this 18-year-old Molly. And then the dilemma becomes, do we try to save that scared little 8-year-old girl who becomes this 18-year-old Molly, or do we accept that 8-year-old Molly is gone and we now bring this 18-year-old Molly into our family? And then it becomes kind of that Tuvix question that you're talking about. Like, do we kill this 18-year-old Molly so we can have our 8-year-old Molly back, or do we leave that 8-year-old Molly knowing she was left alone for 10 years so we can have this 18-year-old Molly?
Right. Or have them both, younger Molly and older Molly. That would have been acceptable to me too.
Right. I did like that there was no temporal displacement. As soon as 8-year-old Molly went home, 18-year-old Molly disappeared.
Right. They had to do it that way because they're lazy. That's the way that worked.
Or, more scientifically accurate than having to do the heavy lifting of explaining why there's two Mollys if that 8-year-old Molly never went back.
I disagree. I think that you can, since it's all make-believe, we can concoct some sort of reason why they would be isolated from each other, I would say. Because she comes through, they beam her from the portal, like just 18, she's still in the past. So once they bring her into the future, you could argue that she's now been isolated from the time, I guess you could say, right? Because you've taken her out of her indigenous timeline, that she's no longer affected by any of that stuff,
right?
So,
well, and there's the argument that Avengers makes, and another book called Past Watch, and I'm sure other places as well, where time is not based on chronological time. Time is based on the timeline of events. So when you travel back to the past, it doesn't matter what you change, because your events were you traveled back to the past to change the past.
Right. Yeah. So you can explain it however you want. It's all make believe,
Right.
I want to know, did Molly know that did older Molly know that she would be killing herself basically when she sent younger Molly back? I don't think that she did.
Yeah, I don't think she did either. And that would have been incredibly tragic if, like, in those last moments, she sees herself disappearing and just screams.
That would have given it some teeth. Right now, no teeth in this particular episode at all.
No teeth.
There's implied teeth that they're now condemning her older daughter back to a terrible life of scavenging for food. And I'm assuming there's wildlife that she has to protect herself from. And all that.
Right. Which except she disappears. Exactly. So they wind up not doing that. But yeah, there were so many things in this episode where, as a parent, there should have been much more weight to the conversations and much higher stakes for what their decisions were, that they didn't play them out at all. That little voice that you just heard is my younger daughter. The older one was on when she was 10, and now my younger one is on when she is 10.
Oh, I thought that was Birdie.
Yeah, he's doing his podcast in the background as well.
Hello, Waverly.
How dare you? Hello.
So, did you watch this episode?
Yes.
And what did you think of the episode?
Stuff.
Well, so what are some? She said stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. Did you enjoy the episode?
Yes.
Okay. What was your favorite part?
When 18-year-old Molly gets to go home and and 8-year-old Molly gets to go home.
Yeah, that was like the happy ending, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was there anything that you had questions about, or anything that you didn't like?
Yes.
Okay, what?
Why did 18-year-old Molly have to go through the portal?
That's actually a very good question that we don't know the answer to either, because it seems kind of mean to make her go through the portal, because they drugged her. They didn't even ask her if she wanted to go. They're just like, well, just take this pill and walk through the pretty lights and you'll be fine.
All right. Keiko, you got her? Okay, 1, 2.
Yeah. I felt the same way, Waverly. I felt like it seemed kind of mean to send her back to the past without any kind of support. I mean, they gave her a little knapsack of snacks that would lasted her 48 hours maximum.
And a doll.
Yeah, they gave her a doll that she could later eat, when she was completely under the ravages of hunger. But yeah, it didn't make any sense why she would have to go back through the portal. Because I got the impression that the planet was uninhabited once again.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, it does not make any sense, Waverly.
What did you think of the Klingon and the baby?
I don't think that it was necessary because she didn't even judge him, the baby.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's a good point. She wasn't, like, he was proving herself unsolicitedly, right?
Yeah, he
Yes.
he was like, "There, are you happy now?" And she's like, "I didn't care to begin with, so."
Still don't care. But if you're happy, I'm happy.
Anything else you want to say?
Is Worf funny looking? Do you like Worf?
Yes.
I like Worf too.
It looks like he has like worms on his forehead.
He has what?
Worms on his forehead?
Ah, yeah. Yeah. What about the girl, Jax? Jax, not Jax. That's from a reality show. Vanderpump Rules. That's neither here nor there. Dax. Did you like Dax with all the stuff on her face?
Yeah, she looked pretty.
Yeah, do you like those little trill marks all over her neck?
They look like cheetah prints.
Cheetah print.
Oh, yeah. She's like Chitara.
She doesn't know that reference either. But yes, she is.
Oh, you're a terrible father.
No, the Thundercats is a terrible cartoon.
Said the man who owns several He-Man t-shirts. I will not take that.
3.
That's like Astro Boy is a terrible cartoon. Said the man who has Power Rangers t-shirts.
That's a debate for another time. Or right now. Could be either one.
Or
never.
Even more appropriate, Star Wars is not a good series. Said the man who's doing a Star Trek podcast.
Now you've stepped over the line.
That's too far.
Yeah, that's too far.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No.
No? Okay.
Was it ever scary when when Molly was kind of running around hurting people?
Yes. I
Yeah.
did not like that.
Yeah. She acted pretty viscerally. She was very kind of out of her mind a little bit. It wasn't like you were unable to predict what she was going to do. She was like a wild animal.
What would you expect? She wasn't home for 10 years.
And that's true. Imagine how bad she smelled when they brought her through the portal. I mean, she's never showered ever in the last 10 years.
She might have jumped in a river.
That's true.
Let's hope she jumped in a river right before she got transported through.
I'm trying to think of how bad. Like, would it have been appropriate for them to all shield their noses? Because they're coming from this. They're coming from this very sterile environment of the of the station, and now there's this feral child who has come through the portal, and then it'd be great if they did a visual effect of like waves, kind of like heat waves coming off of her, but there was like stink instead of heat.
Right. That's just how bad she smelled. Yeah.
And they just start shooting her. Well, but that didn't happen. They didn't do that.
But they didn't do that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Waverly, what else do you have to say? Anything else that you have to say about the episode?
No.
Do you want to do this again?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
now that you know what we're going to do, you can have a little bit more to say.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Are you done? Is it back to the essay?
Are you done with the essay?
No.
Okay. Then yes, back to the essay.
But I finished what I need to do today.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then yeah, you can go see if Grandma needs help. She looks like she was baking something.
Ooh.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Waverly. What were we talking about?
Just how they didn't have any teeth in this, and there were so many things that could have had huge emotional weight as a parent. Things that parents should be discussing / arguing about, and they should have set it up in such a way that they both wanted what was best for Molly. They just felt that what was best for Molly was two different things.
Yeah, there was no conclusion that they drew from any kind of discussion. about we need to do this. No, you can't do that because of this. It was all kind of implied. And I didn't realize, I thought that when they said, you've got a plan, Miles, what's the plan? Like I can tell his look in your eye. You start fiddling with yourself. You're not wearing any socks. I know this.
Your shirt's on backwards.
You haven't showered in weeks. You're concocting something. I thought it was going to be, we're going to get the old Molly back. And it was like, no, we're just going to send the new Molly off to her death, most likely.
Right. That is absolutely what I thought too. Yeah. Like we're going to go back down there. I've been tinkering with the portal, and I think that I can get it back to the right time. Yeah.
And by the way, is there anyone you would like to send a message to who died? Because we can do that now. We can time travel. So
Right.
we can do all those things too while we're sending our child back.
Yeah.
And I thought that there was going to be a new character on the show. I actually thought, I've not seen this. I don't remember this at all. Maybe there's going to be an old Molly that kind of goes off and learns how to do, I thought they were just going to ship her off and that was going to be the end of it too. That kind of occurred to me that maybe that was how they were going to do it.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what would have been more interesting if they intentionally killed older Molly for the younger Molly. If they had to go down that road, that would have been a good dilemma for them, an ethical dilemma. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or if they magically ended up with both of them, 2 kids for the price of 1.
Right.
So I don't know what I would have liked better. I feel like it's more. It's the dilemma of the teeth problem with Star Trek that we keep encountering, where they have these very serious scenarios that they come up with for the plot lines of their episodes, and they don't really explore them. Kind of like I think the last time we talked about this was. I don't know, all of them.
The Wesley one, when the bow breaks.
Yeah. But there was another one, too, that didn't have any teeth. I can't remember which one it was.
Was it Picard?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Anyway. Yeah,
but not enough faces were melted off in Picard for me.
Yeah, we just had a couple eyeballs ripped out.
Not enough incest.
No, not enough?
Not enough. I needed more teeth. But yeah, I felt like that we keep encountering this problem of, there could be some pretty serious consequences from these actions or these mistakes, whatever happens to be. And there never are. They kind of just lucked out, didn't they? I was kind of like on edge. Like, Miles. So at the end, they send old Molly back to the portal. And Miles doesn't know this, but Molly encounters young Molly. And kind of slowly ushers her back and doesn't throw her in. Just like ushers her back slowly. Take your time. Don't want to fall down. And we see Miles pointing his phaser. Why he's going to destroy this thing. I guess they seeded that he wanted to destroy it, right? But you'd think that he would be like, Molly's still alive in the past because we just sent back the older one. So she never dies. So she's still there. Maybe we should look around for her. Let's just take 5 minutes. And do some more scanning, see what we can figure out before we destroy the Stargate. But no, he was just going to destroy it.
Right. That was another part of the episode that was so confusing. Like, first off, you have a time machine, so you kind of have limitless time to figure out how this thing works. Second off, there was no ticking clock. It wasn't like, we finally figured out a way to make it work, but it only has 5 jumps left or something like that. Right. So we have to, and we still can't read the language, so we don't know how these controls work. We don't know.
We need to get James Spader in here stat.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and what's interesting too is I don't feel like it's an adult subject, and I don't feel like they needed to be gentle about this topic. You lost your child. You have this stranger, and there's a chance you can have your other child back. Like, why was that issue not explored? It just seems strange to me. Like, I want to know if the producers said. I want to know if they even gave it any thought, because the script had been around for so long. Did they just kind of polish it up and change the names and move forward? Or did they actually try to talk about these much deeper issues and they were like, no, this is Star Trek. You need to keep it light.
It felt like they felt that just the concept of the episode was enough to get by on. That they didn't need to explore anything. They just need to present the concept as it was, and that would be enough for everybody.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't.
Right. Well, so this kind of leads me to the end result, which is I'm really irritated about it, but I do feel like this is a proper Star Trek episode. I mean, it nails 1 and 2 for sure, but the third one, the question isn't whether or not it was good. The question is whether or not it was there. And it was in like just the weakest, most superficial way.
What was the dilemma that they talked about, though? Where was the dilemma expressed? Because I don't remember there being any conversation. It was kind of, I guess, implicit that we don't want to do this. We want to save Molly, but she's making it very difficult on us, and so this is her punishment. Fine, you don't want to behave in the holodeck? We're going to send you back to home. You want to go home? This is, I'll give you something to cry about, that kind of thing. What dilemma did they have? They were always resolute in their decision.
O'Brien defying Starfleet. Like, so many choices as a parent could have been the dilemma, and it was O'Brien disobeying Starfleet to save his child.
I thought that he was resolute in that too. Odo tries to stop them and then decides to help them.
Right.
So, but that really wasn't the ethical dilemma of the episode. Let's be frank here. They tend to defy Starfleet almost every episode anyway.
I guess that's true. So if ever there was a defiance there, that counts as a dilemma.
They have a ship called the Defiant. So defiance against anything really is...
That's just what they bring up whenever they're like, you went against Starfleet protocol. Like, yeah. We have a ship named the Defiant. What did you expect?
I don't know. It felt as though, yes, they had science fiction. Was it explored? Like, that's been one of the buzzwords we use in our criteria. Was it explored? Was it inherent? Yes, perhaps. You couldn't have had this episode without time travel because it's Molly from the past, but also from the future because she's 18 years old. But I don't know. I'm going to say no on the exploration part. It was like Back to the Future. They have time travel. It's bookended by time travel, but it's really only necessary for the plot to happen, not really explored. Should we talk about Back to the Future a little bit more?
I know. Oh, great. Here we go again.
Or, listeners, if you would like to hear our Back to the Future discussion, where I call Back to the Future not science fiction at all.
You can find it on YouTube.
Huh? You can find it. Is it on YouTube? Oh, great. Yeah, you ruined it, everything. Or you can do the good thing. You can do the proper thing and go and subscribe on Patreon. Just a single $1 a month will get you access to that discussion. Is it $1? I don't know. Maybe it's $3. I don't know. It's not that much money is my point. So support the show, please. Stop being a lazy, cheap asshole. And support the show.
How much of that are you going to put in?
All of it.
Yeah, I'm still on the sci-fi thing because you're right, it's not explored, but it's just it's required for the plot. You could not have this episode without the sci-fi. You couldn't. Like, this episode could not exist.
Yeah, but see, it's still yes, you're right. But we also say that it has to be explored. It's not explored. Like, it's not just about the setting. Yes, science fiction is usually a lot about setting, an interesting setting, but it also has to be explored. Otherwise, it's just sort of background. And inherent to the plot, yes. Okay, so there couldn't be this episode without time travel and without this, I guess you could argue, novel expression of time travel where, I feel like I've seen this before, but not really in this configuration. I don't know. I'm willing to let that one go, right? It is, I will say that it is novel, but it's just like most of the episode is them looking at Molly in the zoo exhibit.
Right. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that part. It's a both and. It's not an either or.
You mean for the first two criteria?
No. I mean for the first criteria, it has to be both integral to the plot and explored.
I don't know. I feel like if it's not explored, then it's not. It's irrelevant.
In general, I could agree with you, but I feel like for this episode, like I'm saying, we could not have this episode without the sci-fi. Like, it is absolutely required for the plot. And this level of time travel presentation, we can't think of a time where this has happened before. So that definitely makes it at least novel, if not unique. So like of those four things, integral, explored, novel, and unique, it's 3 of the 4.
I think integral is a strong word, though. Because integral means that I feel like it's integrated into the plot. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel that the time or the science fiction is necessarily integrated. I think it's necessary for the episode to exist, I guess. But it's the Back to the Future syndrome, where you have a very interesting element of science fiction that is required for the plot to happen, but is not addressed really in the meat of the episode. It's how do they explore it? How do they explore the time travel? How is this part of the episode? It's not really, except the consequences of it. I know they say, I want you to explore the consequences of science fiction, but they don't really. It's really just, we brought this person back. It's more of a character study than anything. And I feel like the episode should be about this final dilemma. It's kind of like Tuvix, which is kind of a goofy episode. But that whole episode is about that final dilemma that Janeway is faced with. And they don't even do that in this. They seem fairly resolute on just, nope, we're not going to try and get the old Molly back. We're just going to kill the new Molly.
Right.
So I feel like I don't know if we can let them off the hook here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, okay. So I do think you're right. Like, I want this to be a proper Star Trek episode because of the sci-fi element to it. But yeah, like the dilemmas that should be there are not. The parents are on the same page about all of it. And
Sisko's barely in this.
Right. And credits say starring Avery Brooks. And I'm like, it does it though.
Does it? Yeah. Is he?
Yeah. Is it? There we go. That was what I was looking for. Is it? Yeah. I mean, if you want to edit all this, be like, yeah, there really isn't any dilemmas.
I like that I edit all together. I just, well, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Like 19 minutes of that.
That sounds horrible. But I think you're right. Like I think that there really isn't any dilemma that a character faces. You know, the only point that comes up with any kind of argument is O'Brien at the very beginning saying, let's take her back. And Keiko's like, no, this is our baby. And that's the end of it. There's no like, well, I wanted to take her back anyway. Like, there's just that's it. They agree and they're on the same page. And now it's just a matter of acclimating adult Molly.
Right.
So
right.
I agree. I'm disappointed, but I agree. This isn't proper Star Trek.
It almost is.
I know. But that's what we're going back to. Like, does the sci-fi have to be explored in the episode? Because you're saying it almost is, but if you're saying it has to be explored, then it's missing 2 of the 3 criteria, in which case it's not even close to a Star Trek episode.
Well, I feel like they're on the cusp because it was they could have. Like, they set the scene to do all of these things. And they had all of the raw materials to satisfy our criteria, but they just didn't do anything. They made hand sandwiches and called it a day.
Right. So do you feel like that in the criteria, the requirement in the first one is that it does have to be explored. It can't just be required to the plot like this episode, but it does have to be explored.
I think so, because then we run into Picard, right? I mean, not the character, but the series.
Right.
Where you have all these, as we talked about in our Picard episode, you have all these pretty lights and pretty holograms, and they're kind of the way they drive the ship now, and it feels very futuristic, but in fact not science fiction, because it's just a fun.
Well, but that's a skin. That's not required to the plot. You know, they're just driving the ship. They don't need to do it that way. That's just fancy.
Right. My point being is that it's peripheral. It doesn't matter. It just because it's there does not make it important. And
right.
And in this case, yes, you needed the science fiction, yes, you needed the time traveling aspect to make the plot viable, but it was bookended by it. It fulfilled its need and then was dormant. And then when they needed to end the episode, became undormant. And that was the end of the episode. That's maybe what separates non-science fiction to science fiction.
So, all right. So then for this episode to have been proper Star Trek, obviously we have the parent dilemma that should have been there, but they should have spent, like, maybe either the A plot or the B plot could have been them trying to understand the time portal and how to get Molly back.
Yeah. I mean, that's what should have been the B plot, was them trying to figure out this technology that is seemingly too futuristic for when it was like it was a old kind of archaeological find. It was buried under some rocks. So that would have been more interesting for Worf and Dax to explore than what we got.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. So I'm just thinking now, like later episodes.
Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, I think it needs to be explored in the episode. Some element of exploration of the science fiction. I mean, they barely even talked about it. It was just there's like Miles or O'Brien was very interested in the technology to save his kid, but never once does anybody express any kind of curiosity about this thing. I mean, that could have been what. I mean, who would you say is the most stoic on the show? Odo, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have Odo express some sort of interest, even if it's a security interest. Like, are there more of these? Is there an ancient god Ra on the other side of this that's going to send us a bomb that we don't know how to defuse? We don't know. But have a curiosity about it.
Right.
But they didn't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Picking up a little bit more of what you're laying down. So,
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's disappointing because you know how much I like time travel.
Right. Well, and this episode was just disappointing overall for like everything we've talked about. There should have been more exploration of either the alien race or the object itself. There should have been more of a conflict between Keiko and O'Brien about what to do with Molly. And I don't know. Like I feel like the ending was fine, but there should have been more of a struggle with that. Like they should have been attached to this 18-year-old Molly, and they now had to decide, like, run the risk of losing Molly forever, or lose Molly forever, keep the 18-year-old, or try to get back the 8-year-old so the 18-year-old never exists. And that's Keiko should have attached herself to the 18-year-old. And O'Brien should have been so focused on the time portal that he never attached himself to her. And so then he was so excited to get the 8-year-old Molly back, and Keiko had already fallen in love, had already started loving the 18-year-old Molly as her own daughter. And so the fight was, which one do they get?
Another way they could have done it was understand the risk that by this, they make the decision that they want to try and get the 8-year-old back. And there's some science-y sort of discussion by, I don't really know who the stand-in for like the smartest person on the station is. I guess that's Dax. In terms of who's the data, who's the person who's running the numbers type of thing.
Right.
Where they talk about, we don't know what will happen. There's this weird thing in time quantum mechanics where we don't know if you mess with the timeline with younger Keiko, with younger Molly, what will happen to older Molly. There's that discussion. We don't know. There's a chance she might just stay here because we ripped her out of the timeline. And because she's no longer in her indigenous timeline, she's exempt from all of the mechanics that happen to that. And so, but we don't know. The numbers, they don't agree. So what might happen is you might get both of them. You might just get the younger one, or you might kill both of them. We don't know. So you have to take the risk. What's the risk you want to take? And they take the risk. It's not worth it, or whatever. They have to, there's your dilemma. Like, give them something to talk about. There's like nothing to talk about. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways they could have done it where you wouldn't have to have changed very much. They're just discussions, just conference room discussions where they talk to Data. Maybe they bring Data on for this episode because he's the expert.
Right.
In good episodes.
Yeah. So
it's a no.
Yeah, it's a regrettably no.
Unfortunately.
And this episode is probably the most disappointing overall, just because the stuff that was lost actually made this a bad episode. And I feel like Voyager is kind of like, this episode was still enjoyable. There was just so much more that they could have done, and so it's disappointing that they didn't do that. And this episode is like, this episode was bad, and it's disappointing because it could have been amazing.
Yeah, I was disappointed. When she time travels back and she comes, I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be good. Can't wait for this." And I was wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a no.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess should we see what we're watching next then?
Yes.
Star Trek. Voyager. See, I left you on your seat of your pants there. Nope. On the edge of your seat, edge of your pants. Season 7, Episode 7, Body and Soul. The Doctor experiences physical sensations for the first time after Seven downloads his matrix into her body.
Oh, I vaguely remember this one.
Yeah,
okay.
me too.
Yeah.
It's going to be some fun character acting for Jerry Ryan. That's my guess.
I don't know. I don't. What I remember is the Doctor being in her head, and just him being able to like experience the sensations that she is experiencing, but he doesn't take over her body.
I remember, I may be inventing this, where there's a scene where he's implanted into her neural cortex, blah, 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 and he's sort of, he's touching himself, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, I've never experienced this before. And it's like everybody's like doing the math, like the subtext is there. It's like, we get it.
Right.
He's now going to sexually harass one of his crewmates.
Yeah. He's going to go scratch the record for a couple hours, right?
Yeah. So that's what I'm expecting, although it could be more interesting. You never know.
What I'm wondering is how much of it is explored, and is it one of those things like this episode where the swap happens at the beginning and then we're just watching Jerry Ryan play Robert Picardo for 45 minutes and they swap at the end?
Yeah. That's what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting there to be a lot of, I think it's just going to be a novelty episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go watch it. I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
But you already knew that. Starting to sound like a Muppet.
I'm excited for when we start doing video and I can see how you do that, because I picture you like kind of pushing your chin into your neck.